Good afternoon. I have to confess that I would prefer to listen to the beautiful music from the Berlin Ensemble to play, but thank you. And they will be back. They will be back. Thank you very much. So my name is Julia Martin-Lefebvre, and I have the honor to chair the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievements Executive Committee, which is responsible for selecting the laureates and for looking after the generous and visionary endowment for the prize. So before I say anything more, first of all, I really don't like mealtime speeches. So what I want to say as a good European, please don't feel that you shouldn't start without me. So start. I had quite a few things outside, and I'll be back. But at my table, don't eat my portion, please. So please start. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Tyler Prize. So the Tyler Prize was established in 1973 by John and Alice Tyler, who wanted to recognize, and I quote from what we found in one of their letters, environmental problem solving. And Johan, you were a great example of that in your lecture this morning, in your conversation this morning. So 1973, some of you might remember, was just a year after the first big international conference on the environment held in Stockholm and convened by the United Nations. So this makes the Tyler Prize absolutely the oldest environmental prize given anywhere, and it's very important to remember that. So there is, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why it was founded and why so early. But really, this is the oldest prize that recognizes the important scientific contributions to the understanding of and solutions for the challenges faced by our Earth system and all of its inhabitants. Very important to remember understanding the problem, but suggesting a solution. For those of you who were at the conversation with Johan, you would see that that's very much a part of his philosophy. So there is something called the Tyler Perpetual Trust, whose members normally are with us. They're not here with us, but they're also supporting environmental movements and also at-risk youth. So as you can see, these Tylers, none of whom are with us alive, at least, well, they're certainly with us in spirit, and that you can see they were very serious about their commitments. So please go ahead and eat. I will feel uncomfortable if you don't. So now I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Dr. Ottmar Edenhofer, economist and scientific director, along with Johan Rockström, of the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research. I have to confess that all these years that I've known PIC, I didn't know all the words. I just knew it was great climate work. Ottmar, over to you, please.
Yeah, dear friends, dear Johan, I'm honored to say a few words about Johan, the prize winner, and my dear colleague at the Potsdam Institute. A Swede and a Bavarian, a natural scientist and an economist, you would think we do not have too much in common. But in fact, we have a lot of things in common. For example, Swedish troops invaded my home village twice, in 1632 and in 1648, but I have generously forgiven Johan for that fact. And at PIC, our joint leadership is based on the understanding that if scientists do not think outside their disciplinary boxes, the global challenges we are facing today will remain unsolved. So let me illustrate this problem by telling a joke. An earth scientist, a chemist, and an economist are stranded on an island with nothing to eat. A can of soup washes ashore, and the earth scientist says, "Let's smash the can open with a rock." The chemist says, "Let's build a fire and heat the can until it melts." Now the economist says, "Let's assume that we have a can opener. Then the market could solve the problem." And as economic history has shown, the economist was right. Because meanwhile, we have a lot of can openers, millions of lives have been improved, and dinner could be secured for all these people because of markets have indeed provide can openers at low costs. Now, fortunately, we do not live on an isolated island, and while the mills of international climate policy grind too slowly, at least our can opener is not just hypothetical. We have to find toolkits, policy instruments, governance structure for a successful climate policy. But what this anecdote shows us that each scientific discipline alone is faced with its limitation and its academic reasoning and its methods. So, for example, we economists, we can explore the solution space for policymakers. However, without natural scientists, we wouldn't even know that a soup is necessary for human beings. So natural science accurately assesses the state of the Earth and the biophysical impacts of climate change, but economists and social scientists are required to balance the policy solutions with social justice and fairness. And it is why Johan and I have co-lead PIC since 2018 as an earth scientist and as an economist, and it is our joint vision to break academic silos and to advance international, interdisciplinary, solution-oriented research for global sustainability. Our joint research agenda at PIC combines natural science and social science because we firmly believe that climate change can only be understood through an integrated research, and we can only mitigate and adapt through collective efforts. And therefore we said basically our joint research project is managing the global commons, governing the global commons within the planetary boundaries. What are the global commons? Speaking as an economist, the boundaries of the Earth's biophysical system translate into scarcities. The atmosphere, the ocean, the biosphere are common pool resources that are openly accessible, free to us, but finite. And this means we have to limit the excess in one way or another, otherwise we would overexploit the global commons. Therefore, global cooperation is important, but for that, we have not good solutions at hand to solve global cooperation problems. The scarcities of natural resources that are defined by the planetary boundaries need to be reflected in clear signals to the citizens, to the consumers, to the policymakers. Prices are one good signal, not the only one. In the case of climate change, polluter pays is an important principle, and also people who supply carbon sinks should be rewarded, and also services for biodiversity. So otherwise, we are quite doomed to accept severe climate damages. So current research at the Potsdam shows in Nature that due to historic emissions and infrastructural path dependency, the world is facing an income reduction of almost 20% at a global average in the next 3 decades. And if emissions will continue to accumulate into the atmosphere, the income losses will amplify in the second half of the century. So in that sense, climate change is a real danger to our freedom and also to our ability to enhance justice. The economic and the social science research at Potsdam analyzes instruments. Natural scientists explore how climate change unfolds as well as the interconnections between the world's biophysical system. Both natural scientists, social scientists try to communicate the results also to the outer world, and this is key. And this is one of Johan's outstanding achievements. His work is not only scientifically groundbreaking, he also manages what is crucial yet challenging achievement for scientists to cross the gap between science and public perception and to communicate ideas that gain hold even outside the academia. Now let me at the end look back to our 3 shipwrecked people. If Johan was one of them, and I'm certain they would be not left on an island struggling with a can of soup or can openers. because Johan has the ability to think beyond boundaries, and he encourages us to do the same. Johan, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Otmar. I must say that your message really speaks to me, speaks to my heart. I was once the director of a very big science-based conservation organization, and I used to hear my colleagues explain at receptions or lunches like this when they were asked, "What do you do?" And they would say, "Well, I'm saving the planet." And I was always very well-behaved and didn't want to call them back to order just then, but I would say to them later on, please don't say that the planet would be just fine without us. So we do need social scientists and economists, and we need to work together. So let me go on now. I want to tell you a little bit about the Tyler Prize, which some of you may not know. But with today's celebration, 88 brilliant individuals and 4 organizations will have been recognized by the Tyler Prize since 1974. And if you look at the little booklets on your tables, you will appreciate how proud we are of them and of the Tyler Prize. So we're very pleased to be in this beautiful city of Potsdam on this occasion, making it only the second time that the Tyler Prize, since its founding in 1973, is celebrated outside of the United States. And actually the first time was our 2021 laureate, Sir Andy Haynes, whose name you'll find, who said to me, "I cannot justify crossing the Atlantic for dinner and a celebration." So we had a small event in London, but then we've decided now that we would have from time to time these celebrations in other parts of the world. And we left it to Johan to select this place, whatever place he wanted, where he wished to have this event. And as all things he does, he did the right thing because Potsdam is perfect. So now allow me to make a few introductions before we honor our laureate. So the Tyler Prize Committee consists of 11 persons, 10 persons, including the chair, invited in our personal capacity, and 1 representative of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, which holds the endowment and hosts our secretariat. And that's where we've had most of our events. So let me introduce them, and I ask them just to stand up one by one. Here with us today are my fellow executive committee members. So let me start in alphabetical order. Chris Boone, where are you, Chris? There he is, great. Julia Carabias. Julia, ¿dónde estás? There she is. Margaret Catley Carlson, there, thank you. Nicole Dubillier. Nicole, there she is. Great. Stephanie Hampton. Stephanie, great. Jonathan Patz, who asked a very good question this morning. Where are you, Jonathan? And Jim Watson. Jim, great. Unfortunately, 2 of our executive committee members are not able to be with us today, and that's Rosina Bierbaum and Ezequiel Escura. And we await the name of a new representative from the University of Southern California who always sits on our board, and we've had great people. So, and you will have also seen, I think, on the screen, which is there, the names of 2 of our advisors. We have an advisory council, and this is Judy McDowell and Alan Kovich. So I'm also very pleased to introduce Amber Brown, the Tyler Prize administrator, based at the University of Southern California, which by now everybody knows. But where are you, Amber? Actually, Amber, you're very lucky that your chair is not the jealous type, because at every single event like this, you're the only one who gets a kind of... But I see why. You deserve it. Okay, and then let me also introduce Jade Lavelle, the head of Reagency, and her team. Jade, are you in here somewhere? And her team. And it's a wonderful team, and they are our communications partners. And you will see in a few minutes why I hope you looked at the video that was turning at the reception about the history of the Tyler Prize. So we have a room full of important guests here to celebrate with us, including, of course, the laureate's family, friends, and colleagues, as you heard just now. I do want to recognize 2 Tyler Prize laureates among the 88 who are here with us today. Pavan Sukhdev. Pavan, please stand up. He shared the Nobel, it is almost the Nobel Prize. He shared the Tyler Prize with Gretchen Daly from Stanford in 2020. Actually, that was a COVID year, and we recognize their work in valuing nature, something that Johan also talked about this morning. And then we have Rashid Soumaila. Rashid. So Rashid, who shared the prize last year in 2023 with Daniel Pauly, both of them based at the University of British Columbia, working on rigorous ocean management. And Rashid is also an economist, by the way, Otmar, in case you haven't talked to him yet. So, and the good news is that Rashid has agreed to join our executive committee as of today. So we are delighted. Yeah. So I could spend hours talking about all these distinguished people here, but today, of course, we're focusing on our laureate, and by the end of this celebration, we'll be able to go out there again for our dessert. Hopefully you'll get to know everybody in this room. So today's award is particularly important as we face the existential and inextricably linked challenges of climate change, loss of biodiversity, threats to our oceans, food and health insecurity, poverty, and the apparent difficulty we seem to have as human beings to live in peace with each other, sharing our only home, this small planet. So the Tyler Prize of Executive Committee receives over 100 excellent nominations each year, and to be a Tyler Prize laureate, first of all, you need to be nominated. So I'm asking those of you who haven't thought about that yet, think about nominating great people in your networks. So we have a lot of very, very good nominations. I just want to remind you of our criteria. All of that is on our website. But that we invite nominations of strong scientists in both the natural and or the social sciences. And we want people who have demonstrated measurable and scalable impact on policy and on practice. This, of course, really reflects the title of the Tyler Prize. It is the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement. So you can see why Johan got it. That's obvious. We also encourage nominees to address global inequalities and demonstrate engagement with younger generations. But the most important thing is great science and impact. So today, as you know, we're here to celebrate the 2024 Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement laureate, Professor Johan Rockström.
Founded in 1973 by John and Alice Tyler, the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement is the world's most prestigious environmental award, celebrating laureates who have made an extraordinary difference for the benefit of humanity. This year, we celebrate the achievements of Professor Johan Rockström, whose groundbreaking research on planetary boundaries provides the clearest picture we have on the health of our planet. His leadership, determination, and eloquence has earned him an impressive global following, including Indiana Jones himself, Harrison Ford.
Johan is a trailblazer, a brilliant mind, a remarkable person.
Like Indy, Rockström embodies the spirit of discovery, exploring uncharted territories in environmental science and bravely pioneering the entirely new field of planetary boundaries science. With unwavering determination, his quest to save our planet for the future of humanity makes him a hero worthy of the big screen.
By the early part of this millennium, it was obvious that Earth systems were in a state of decline.
We knew there was a crisis. What we didn't have was a plan for the crisis. We were saving the ocean here, the rainforest there, There was no strategy.
Earth system sciences were working in more siloed packages, so physicists in their domains, chemists in theirs, and geologists and biologists in separate domains. But they didn't tell you about the state of the planet.
What was needed is something to bring all that together in one place and to give us a real overview of the impact we were having on the planet.
Johan brought together a team of 28 leading scientists to identify the systems that are essential to human life on Earth and measure how those systems were performing under the pressures of increased human activity.
What keeps Earth habitable? Johan Rockström was able to define that what constitutes Earth's life support system, and where are we in trouble? The concept of planetary boundaries just defines what keeps Earth safe in a universe that is really not very friendly to humans.
So the planetary boundaries framework brought the science together across disparate areas, across climate change, across nutrient cycles, across water availability, in a way nobody's done before. And that has an impact and a power that all of the individual assessments of things like water and climate change and land use just don't have on their own.
We were able to have the Holocene as a reference point, so we could for the first time quantify a safe operating space. That has never been done before. So it's like taking the planet to the doctor and having a systematic, comprehensive diagnosis of the patient. Because if you don't know the state of the patient, you cannot find a cure.
The planetary boundaries were widely adopted by scientists and decision makers alike.
I love the planetary boundaries framework. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, there's an answer. There's a way to look at what I could see locally and the global picture at the same time.
Due to its conceptual clarity, the planetary boundary science has made huge impact, both not only in terms of scientific community, but also in terms of policymaking process.
So it's not just something that sits in an ivory tower, it's now being used actively by a whole set of actors around the world.
The planetary boundaries are incredibly useful for seeing the world as a whole. Not just the animals, not just the climate, but everything together, so we know where to put our efforts.
Johan's planetary boundaries were an alarming call to action, but also served as a guide for reform of policy, governance, and business practices.
Fundamentally, this was a contribution for science, but it was also clearly science for change. The fact that we've transgressed now 6 of the 9 boundaries shows, oh my God, this is serious.
It's real warning that we need to act quite urgently. A lot of the indicators are going in the wrong direction. I think Johan and many others do persevere because it's so important to keep bringing this message to decision makers who have the power to make change.
It is definitely very frustrating. The world will not be destroyed by those who deny the planetary boundary science. It will be destroyed by those who neglect that we have a problem. The world needs to step up and needs to recognize that this is not the moment to sit still anymore.
Johan has worked tirelessly in his efforts to turn cutting-edge Earth science into a global framework for urgent change.
I think Johan Rockström deserves to win this Tyler Prize for environmental achievement because he really is the leading scientist and communicator of our time. People know his name, they've heard about planetary boundaries, and he just explains it so well for impact.
Johan is more than a brilliant scientist. We're looking at a really special human being, and I am privileged to be his friend.
Johan Rockström has had an enormous impact on conservation. Johan is a trailblazer, a brilliant mind, a remarkable person.
The Tyler Prize Committee felt that Johan's work on defining planetary boundaries is a perfect example of science leading to impact for informed actions. This is environmental achievement at work, and we at the Tyler Prize are extremely proud of our 85th laureate. You haven't seen that. Knowing you, Johan, you're so modest. You might have been embarrassed with all this adulation, all this admiration, but you deserve it. So just live with it and continue doing your great work. So before we call our 2024 laureate to the stage, you will have seen the list of prior Tyler Prize winners on your tables. In addition to noticing how many distinguished scientists have received this prize, you might have noted that Johan Rockström is the second Swede to receive this award. Dr. Bert Bolin, who some of you may have known, I knew him well and admired him as I admire you, Johan. He received the prize in 1988, just as he moved to the achievement part of his distinguished career, as he agreed and did so brilliantly serve as the first chair of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So there is no question that, Johan, you belong in this group of science and achievement geniuses. So I'm now pleased to invite Dr. Jim Watson, who you saw on the screen, a member of the Tyler Executive Committee, to introduce Johan Rockström, who doesn't really need much introduction, but you need to do that anyway. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Julia. Yeah, I was just thinking that as you introduced me. But Johan, I'm afraid we're going to just extend your embarrassment slightly further. I think you've demonstrated many of the reasons that we've awarded you the prize this year very well in earlier events today, in that conversation many of us were at this morning. So I have 5 reasons, which I will briefly just describe, which will be no surprise to anybody, I don't think. First, the science. Second, the collaboration. I think really the collaboration with ranges of scientists and other organizations. The adaptability of the science, moving with the evidence. You referred to that in some of your answers. The impact, of course, and then the emphasis on solutions as well as diagnosing the problem, diagnosing the patient, but actually thinking about what the cure might look like. So clearly the science is very clear. We've had that demonstrated to us throughout the day. The Planetary Boundaries Framework is now being taken up and is very well recognized, and increasingly has been built on and published and used as a way to monitor the state of the Earth. The collaboration, I think one thing that strikes me certainly about you, Johan, is you're not the heroic scientist, the individual scientist that's made the major breakthrough. You said it yourself, somebody else maybe could have done it, but you did it. It's bringing all these areas of science together and the people that were pursuing it to bring this framework together and talk in a way that nobody has done before and bring that evidence base together in a way it hasn't before. I also appreciate the adaptability. If you look at the various papers and the versions of the Planetary Boundaries Framework, it's not something which has been static. I think, again, you alluded to it earlier, that all of these things, especially if it's so ambitious, often invites other scientists to start thinking, well, is that the way I would do it? What's missing? What would I do differently? So there's been a lot of debate about it, and it's adapted. And I think one of the ways, at least for me as a social scientist, I appreciate is that inclusion of justice in the framework in its more recent incarnations. So that's something that we really like too. I think the impact speaks for itself. You've mentioned the work with cities, with governments, with the European Commission, with companies, the citations in policy documents, etc., and the recent development with the Planetary Guardians, all examples of where impact is really manifesting itself with decision makers. But then finally on solutions, I think some colleagues I talk to about this framework say, well, it's all about describing the problem, but what strikes me is that you're not afraid when asked, or even when not asked, to talk about what we need to do in the face of the things it's described, whether it be phasing out fossil fuels, whether it be valuing nature better, whether it be actually reforming some of the international governance processes in the UN, which can be very slow and very frustrating. So I think your willingness to go beyond describing the problem and into thinking about the solution is very, very important too. So that's, I hope, gives you lots of good reasons as to why we've awarded you the Tyler Prize this year. So now I need to do the formal bit, which means I have to read off a piece of paper, which I'm not as good at doing as when I've just got notes, but the formal citation I think is really important. The citation's actually a bit longer than last citations I remember, but I think that really is encapsulating the importance of Johan's work. So for the 2024 Tyler Prize, we honour Johan Rockström for establishing an increasingly accepted framework for safeguarding Earth's life support system. His holistic approach interconnects geological, biophysical, ecological and human spheres. His interdisciplinary leadership in developing this scientific approach has also led to a widening appreciation of the diminishing safe operating space to continue supporting human life on Earth. Johan Rockström, we are pleased to recognize your leadership in pioneering a science-based approach to sustainable development for people on a stable and resilient planet, and formalizing the notion that stable functioning of the Earth system is a prerequisite for thriving societies. Through initiating and convening the Earth Commission, tasked with scientifically defining and quantifying a safe and just corridor for people and planet, you have established the framework for safeguarding Earth's life support systems, inspiring the advancements in science and elevating education, communication and awareness well beyond the institutional academic sphere to inter- and non-governmental bodies and the general public. Your scientific efforts have moved this mandate beyond monitoring the planetary boundaries by focusing on the importance of promoting equity and improvements in the quality of life for the most vulnerable populations on Earth. So with that, I'd like to invite you, Johan, to the stage to receive your prize.
I'm going to give you this. Now this is formal. Now you have to wear it all the time. I don't know if your walls have any space for this kind of thing.
Ooh. Thank you.
Yes, we want to have a picture, and then we want to hear from you a little bit. Yes, yes, you stay in the middle.
Well, thanks, John, Julia. I'm, to be honest, speechless and completely overwhelmed, not only for receiving the world's most prestigious environmental award, not only for having Professor Oliver Günther hosting us at Uni Potsdam, but the fact that you are here is just amazing. For me, it's so humbling. And, it's 17th May. I know it's a long holiday ahead. I hear on my kind of connections with youth that Taylor Swift kicks off her Europe tour today. And I guess there are some Swiftie dads and mums in the room, perhaps. So fantastic that you chose to be here at this significant moment. But to be a bit serious, that this overwhelmed feeling is more than that. I mean, it's a tremendous honor to receive this prize. But it's actually something that I really want to emphasize, and I want to correct one thing in this fantastic film. It's not Johan's planetary boundaries. It is a collective effort. It is an international community of scientists that have been working so hard for 15 years. True, I've been privileged to facilitate it, to lead together, as I mentioned earlier, particularly with Professor Catherine Richardson and the late Professor Will Steffen, but so many of you in the room here. And it all started off with the core leadership and collaboration at the Stockholm Resilience Center, but then very rapidly I realized that the real anchor point for the frontier of planetary boundary science is at the Potsdam Institute. That is very early where we relied on the LPJ modeling work, on the Earth system modeling, on all the paleoclimatic research, all the tipping point science. It all gathered together here in Potsdam. I sat so many times in John Schellenhuber's room. Stefan, you remember this, also Stefan Ramstorff, Wolfgang Lucht, so many of you, Dieter Gerten. It was so easy for me the day when John called me and said, look, shouldn't you consider applying for directorship at PIC, and that which then translated into this phenomenal model of co-directing it together with Ottmar Edenhofer, which, by the way, is such a beautiful model. Not only that, I mean, even though I can debate the issue of who can open that can on the island, but other than that, we really have such a great collaboration. I mean, by the way, my point, of course, is that what's the point of having infinite can openers when you have finite number of cans? So that's a bit of a debate issue we have, Ottmar and myself, but we love it, but it really is important. Another thing that I'd like to emphasize here, which I shared a bit in confidence last night, but I think I can also share it with you here, that receiving the Tyler Prize is strategic as well. It's not only a boost for the science, it's not only mainstreaming planetary boundary science, it's not only turning a corner, but it's strategic. Because Tyler Prize is not only the world's most prestigious environmental award, it's a US award. And we have all the time felt that if there's any place where we have more challenges in getting planetary boundary science thinking to be really established in academia, in policy and business, it's in the US. And of course, you're giving so much muscle to our ability to make this even more a global collective effort across all geographies in the world. So I really thank you for being brave also from a California perspective. And I promised you, Julia, that as soon as you call, I've come to California and also have a session there together. I also want to just a few thanks. I mean, I established the Stockholm Resilience Center with Professor Carl Folke. He couldn't be with us here today, but many of you Swedes in the room, you recognize that we would not have made it to the Planetary Boundary Framework if it hadn't been for that strategic fellow academic partnership standing on the resilience theory work. I mentioned Will Steffen and Catherine, the Potsdam Institute, but I also like to emphasize something that came across very nicely in this film, which is that the planetary boundary science is a fundamental academic endeavor. When we published this in Nature in 2009, it was to challenge the scientific community. But it very rapidly became something that was demanded from business leaders, from policy, from finance, from civil society. So the fact that Harrison Ford, that's just amazing, by the way, that you got him to do this. But it's genuine. Because Harrison Ford is, since 30 years, the co-chair of the board of Conservation International. And I've had interactions with him. You saw that punch with John Kerry. I can tell you, I mean, a bit confidential with you, he calls me once a month and wants to have a scientific update on what? Planetary boundary science. It's quite remarkable how this has actually eaten itself into the fabric of many of the positive forces of change in the world. The World Economic Forum, Netflix, we've done so many massive open online courses. We've been working so much with so many of the partners who are in the room here right now. And I'd like to, genuinely thank you for two reasons. One is that you're helping the science to have impact, but I can tell you, you help us as academics as well. You help us keeping our energy levels up, because this is what gives us the light in the tunnel, that we can connect with the real world of change. And don't underestimate the role that you play there. I just want to close with one of my little tricks, and it actually passed very quickly in the film. I'm very surprised, but I don't think anyone caught it, which is that I've written a book called Big World, Small Planet. It is really one way of communicating the fact that up until very recently, we were a relatively small world on a big planet. We could build our economic paradigm on this assumption that there's this infinite number of fish and trees and biodiversity and air and ocean out there. Now we are no longer there. We've filled up the whole space, quoting Will Steffen. We've reached a saturation point, to quote John Schellenhuber. We are now the big world on a small planet. So therefore, I tend to forget it, but from now on I'll never forget anymore because it was on this film. I always bring a little planet in my pocket. And this little planet, it's beautiful because it has all the continents and all the countries. It was given to me by Professor Takeuchi, a dear colleague in Japan, who said you need a more beautiful version of this. And I do this to make the point in as many times I can on lectures that this is a reminder that we are the big force on a very small, fragile planet. You just put it in the pocket and it's time to be stewards of the entire system. Thank you so much. As I said, what can I say? Fantastic. Thank you.
Johan, knowing you, I'm sure you're going to wear that medal every day, but I'm going to bring the box down. I just wish you all bon appétit, guten appetit, and let's continue discussing at our tables.